Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Before he was grilled by Republican senators on the House Judiciary Committee yesterday, the acting Secret Service Director, Ronald Rowe, acting director, same as the previous director, he explained sort of what happened generally, and that's all he really could offer. Explained generally what happened on July 13th, failed assassination attempt on Trump. It was a failure of a certain kind.
This was a failure of imagination. A failure to imagine that we actually do live in a very dangerous world, where people do actually want to do harm to our protectees. I think it was a failure to challenge our own assumptions. The assumptions that we know our partners are going to do everything they can, and they do this every day. But we didn't challenge our own assumptions of, we assume that someone's going to cover that. We assume that there's going to be uniform presence. We didn't challenge that internally during that advance.
The nice little two-step of appearing to accept responsibility while essentially redistributing it to local law enforcement over whom you had authority. That's what he did there. And then in exchanges with Lee and Hawley that we went in particular that we went through earlier in the program, it was a lot of the agency failed, but no individual in the agency failed. So it's a way for the agency to generally take credit for it, collectively take credit for it, but no one will have to individually take credit for it, so everyone individually can keep their positions. We've seen this routine before, and we're seeing it again. By the way, it really fits the description that was provided by this counter sniper who sent out an email to the entire uniformed division within Secret Service, this reporting from Susan Crabtree, Real Clear Politics, in which he basically said he is going to continue speaking out until 5 high-level supervisors, there's one down, I assume he means the former director, 5 high-level supervisors are either fired or removed from their current positions. We have fallen short for years. We just look good doing it. I've conveyed the thoughts about what needs to change to not only supervisors, but also those responsible for training us, only to be brushed off as those with less experience somehow know more than me. He concluded his email, the motto of the United States Secret Service, CYA, cover your arse. And every supervisor is doing it right now. I think that's a fair and accurate depiction of what we got from Acting Director Rowe yesterday. For more on this, and perhaps who can get to the bottom of it, because it seems like the Secret Service and the FBI are going to be less than forthcoming, as is their wont. We're pleased to be joined by Julie Kelly. She is the author of the Substack Declassified with Julie Kelly. Declassified with Julie Kelly is her Substack. And her book, January 6th, How Democrats Used the Capitol Protest to Launch a War of Terror Against the Political Right. Julie, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
So your piece for speaking of Real Clear Politics, RealClearInvestigations.com, your piece identifies an individual who you believe could get to the bottom of the Trump shooting if he was provided the encouragement and authority and political backing to do so. Who's that?
So this is an individual named Joseph Kafari. He is the Trump-appointed Inspector General for the Department of Homeland Security. Now, the Secret Service is under DHS, which a lot of people are not aware of. He has been investigating the Secret Service's role or lack thereof and other scandals with the agency related to the events of January 6th. So his report has been done for at least the last few months, sitting on the Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas' desk, at least since April. Mayorkas is refusing to release that report because it will have damaging information about the Secret Service, with some ties to July 13th, but also more importantly, why the text messages belonging to at least 24 Secret Service officials, including Kim Cheadle, the now resigned former head of the Secret Service, why those text messages were deleted at the end of January 2021. This is something that Cuffari uncovered himself as he was investigating. He was being stonewalled by top DHS and Secret Service officials into this investigation. They then started attacking Cuffari, trying to discredit him. So we're waiting to see that report, Dan, to see exactly who was responsible for deleting those texts, why they were never recovered, and maybe some information as to what those text messages revealed.
Well, when do you think we're going to get those text messages?
Well, Amy, it's interesting because how can the Department of Homeland Security, with all the surveillance and intelligence tools that they have, law enforcement tools, how could they not recover these text messages? Why did they authorize whoever was responsible at the time? Mayorkas was confirmed a few weeks after these text messages were deleted, but they had already received preservation notices from Congress, every federal agency, to keep any evidence related to the events of January 6th, to preserve all of it, because it was going to be under investigation by, of course, the FBI and then Congress. So why were these messages deleted? So he's going to, we assume, and I've been told by congressional sources that this report will address that. Also recall, the Secret Service, we're told, missed the pipe bomb that was outside the DNC headquarters on January 6th. Now, why is that important? Their protectee, Kamala Harris, was at the DNC headquarters when that device allegedly was found recovered, and she was evacuated out of the building. Was this another lapse in their duty, or was there really not a pipe bomb there, as we were told the night before, and someone set it there? So this is something else Cuffari reportedly looked into, investigated, and we're anxious to see his findings on that.
The issue, though, is how much can he really identify, and how many answers can he really get to if the agency stonewalls, agencies plural, stonewall him? I mean, yeah, this very much has the feel like talking about the Horowitz reports on of the FBI's conduct during the Russian collusion witch hunt. And yeah, Horowitz, documented some lapses in professional judgment and behavior that was not consistent with policy and so on and so forth. But it was all sort of sanitized, even though it was unmistakable, and it accomplished a little bit in terms of providing some explanation for the conduct and confirming some of what we sort of assumed to be true. But, I mean, it didn't really result in any serious reckoning for the Department of Justice or the FBI.
That's right, Dan. And I think that is how we create people like Kim Cheadle or Ronald Rowe or Christopher Wray or Paula Bate, who's the deputy FBI director. This is what happens when no one is held accountable. When no one is held accountable for framing President Trump, concocting the Russia collusion hoax, opening a special counsel office for 2 years to try to legally, financially destroy people over something that was completely fabricated, partially by the FBI, then this is what we get, right? We get a Ronald Rowe screaming at Josh Hawley yesterday, defending his employees who didn't do their job that day, almost got President Trump killed, screaming at a U.S. senator, claiming his people are being persecuted. I mean, that was like a surreal moment watching that unfold, because he is in a long line from Jim Comey to Sally Yates, Andy McCabe, go through the long list of Russia collusion hoaxsters. And this is what we get. So I think that is the really frustrating part. Now back to the IG, at least we will get some information. Horowitz did give us a lot of information. He also told us who wasn't cooperating. And I think that this is what the Cuffari report could do as well at DHS. Right,
but then we're trying to, pull bits and pieces of information out from these obstinate agencies for years to come. Like we saw even this week, John Solomon reporting over at Just the News, some new emails that he has been able to extract through FOIA and whatever other means that should be unnecessary but are necessary. Emails that suggest, well, wait a second, the Pelosi's people had warnings about the possibility of a breach, and there's these exchanges between her sergeant at arms and federal law enforcement and so forth. And it's just, and it's like the Pelosi conversation with her chief of staff in real time on January 6th that was released a few weeks back. I mean, this is three and a half years later, and everything still dribbles out, and you have to pull teeth to get anything to try to put together a comprehensive understanding of what did and didn't happen.
Right. And the worst part of all of that, of course, is that you have people sitting in prison for years.
Yes.
Because of whatever failures. Now, I have my own suspicions about that email and about the performance by Nancy Pelosi, but, we could talk about that another day because people like Sean Gallagher and her staff, Paul Irving, those are not necessarily trustworthy people at all. But I do want to go back to the IG, not just Cuffari, because he has opened 2 investigations into July 13th. But what Chris Wray said last week, we're also still waiting for the DOJ, IG Michael Horowitz report into the FBI and DOJ's role in January 6th. And what he said last week, and I've also heard this, is that report will address the number and the level of involvement of FBI confidential human sources, also known as informants, in January 6th. That's a big question. That's probably the question I get the most. So hopefully we will get some more answers about that.
We also have this. The FBI is getting back into conversations with social media platforms. Oh, good. They plan to resume regular meetings in the coming weeks with social media companies to brief them about foreign malign influence threats. Right, it's the foreign threats that are malign. There's a July 12 memo that was made public as part of a 58-page report from DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz, who we were just talking about. And there are examples where the FBI, I guess, has done some legitimate work. In 2020, according to Horowitz, the FBI became aware of an online video threatening American voters that was purportedly created by the Proud Boys, but actually created by Iranian nationals seeking to influence American voters. FBI passed this information on to the relevant social media company, which removed the Iranian video. But, of course, we know that most of what they did was trying to to work on behalf of the Biden candidacy. And I mean, since the leadership hasn't changed materially, we should expect probably the same thing. The Wall Street Journal also reporting on this very naively that, we should be concerned. We should. It's good that they're interdicting foreign malign influences, but, we should be concerned that they crossed the line. But the good news is that most of the social media companies reported, according to the Horowitz report, a good working relationship with the FBI. Well, yeah, they have a good working relationship with them because they agree on what they're both doing. I mean, that's not a positive thing. That's called that's actual collusion, what we saw in 2020.
We did. And by the way, what happened to the Wall Street Journal? I mean, they just regurgitate whatever they're told by the regime. Very disappointing. But yes, so we saw this in 2020. We know that the FBI, particularly the San Francisco field office under Elvis Chan, was in almost daily communications with big tech platforms to censor both the material from Hunter Biden's laptop. We were told that was Russian disinformation, something the FBI went along with as well, but also to censor criticism about absentee voting. So they were in cahoots in 2020. So now, to your point, we're supposed to think that this is a good idea. And now they've moved from Russia to Iran, right? They know that they've exhausted the Russia line. So now they're moving to Iran. You saw Merrick Garland interview, and you've seen this with the FBI, sort of suggesting that Thomas Crooks might have been a tool of the Iranian regime to assassinate Donald Trump. No. You just can't move the chairs around the Titanic. You can't just blame what you guys are responsible for, your failures, possibly behind the scenes doing something as well, and now blame it on Iran, who, by the way, the Democrats have emboldened. We know that.
Our partner in peace, I recall not so long ago, I thought. Yeah.
Right.
So,
right.
Julie, what are your sources saying about the shooter, Crooks?
Not a lot, but I think, Amy, one thing that should raise red flags is the fact that the FBI said he had encrypted app chats on his devices. The FBI claiming that they could not get into those encrypted apps. That, to me, is highly suspicious. I don't think that there is a chance he was not in communication with some sort of government asset, perhaps an FBI informant, undercover agent, or a DHS agent. They have sources as well. That, to me, does not pass the smell test. It's just unfathomable that this 20-year-old could pull this off on his own, that he was not somehow instructed or incited or motivated to do this by other agents because we've seen this recently. Whitmer Fednapping hoax, January 6th. They just did this to a man in Nevada a few months ago, set him up, FBI informant. So,
but we don't have it. We don't have any evidence of communications between him and any of these agencies at this point.
No, but as she just said, they can't get in because it's encrypted, right?
Correct.
I
don't trust the FBI. I don't trust anything that they say.
I don't trust them either, but I just want to sort of make sure we set the table of what we understand and what we don't understand and questions we have, and it's fine to ask questions. Yeah, okay. All right, Julie Kelly, her Substack is declassified. The report that she was just talking about on the DHS Inspector General Joseph Kafari, you can find at realclearinvestigations.com. And also, if you haven't, pick up her book, January 6th, How Democrats Used the Capitol Protests to Launch a War on Terror Against the Political Right. Julie, thank you as always.
Thank you. Glad to have you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560.